Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel discussion on the era of intelligent collaboration. The year 2020 and 2021 witnessed an exponential rise in the concept of remote working or work from home culture and disrupted businesses across verticals. However, there are huge challenges while adopting work from home. IT leaders juggle with digital disruptions and innovations due to confidential and sensitive customer and transactional data that are involved in the ecosystem. To stay agile and nimble, they are increasingly leveraging data management solutions and cloud-based collaboration platforms that are scalable and flexible, yet robust and secure. In this session today, our esteemed panelists will discuss the ways in which they are leveraging digital capabilities. So without any more ado, please allow me to welcome our panelists of the day in alphabetical order. Mr. Amit Mahajan, CTO, Central Depository Services Limited. Mr. Ankeet Bhat, Chief Strategy Officer, MapmyIndia. Mr. Giridhar Yasa, CTO, Lendingkart. Mr. Phil Scanlon, VP Field Technology, Asia Pacific, Japan and Middle East, Solace Corporation. Mr. Raje, GM and Head of India, Zoom Video Communications. And Mr. Sourabh Chatterjee, President and Head IT, Web Sales and Travel, Bajaj, Allianz, General Insurance. Welcome, gentlemen. Let me set the ball rolling with Amit. Amit, not only do customers today expect more from companies than ever before, but they also face competition from players that are, from completely unrelated fields. For instance, tech giants like Amazon, Google, and PayPal are competing with banks today. To overcome these challenges, you need to offer innovative services and exemplary customer experience. How can technology leaders achieve this? Your thoughts here.
So I come from an organization which does not, fear these hot new fintech firms, but we feed on the innovations that these new age players bring in. And here I'm not only referring to Amazon, Google, and PayPal, because ours being a financial industry, we are more concerned with the players in the financial sector and not exactly in the banking space. So as a depository, we are the custodians of your stocks and all other digital assets. Maybe you have mutual funds, corporate bonds, gold bonds, etc. So we are not an organization that has moved from physical to digital. We were born digital. Our whole genesis is to digitize your financial assets. So our challenges are slightly different in the sense that our customers don't necessarily interact with us directly. So we don't interface with our customers. It is through the DPs the customers interact with us. So, and most of the times, all of you would have depository accounts, but I'm sure you'll go back home and check in which depository you have the depository account, because it has been opened with a bank or with any depository participant. So in such a scenario, for us, what is more important is we have to bring in innovations which are more towards the safety of the market and giving confidence to the investors that their assets are safe with us. So in the last 2 years of the pandemic, we have really grown exponentially. For us, the growth has come only from IT-enabled innovations. So some of the innovations at our end, which we have done, are online customer onboarding. And there's something called, which is very, very specific to our industry, is called an electronic delivery instruction slip. So in both the cases, it's an electronic initiative. And in that sense, it's a completely end-to-end digital initiative. And this has been kind of a game changer for us. And these innovations have been lapped up, especially by the new age, brokerage firms and fintech companies. So that's what is driving us going forward.
Sure. Wonderful, Amit. Like you said, technology has become the bedrock of more and more companies, especially in the last 2 years, where we've seen technology playing a critical role in enabling differentiation for companies. Wonderful. Let me move to Ankeet now. Ankeet, CIOs are increasingly being asked to help attract, manage, and support customers. How can IT leaders enhance CX or customer experience in these times of flux?
So thanks for that, Yashvendra, for that question. So I think we're back into a world that is online, offline, hybrid. I think there's a interesting hybrid world that we're in. But 2020 was truly the time that was extremely challenging. I think all of us had to, come up with new methods of doing things. Some are still convenient and some still prevail like this. I mean, the exchanging ideas with people who resonate the same thinking is just such a great experience for all of us. And when we come together and we just kind of know that we're all thinking on the same wavelength, we leave with that. We leave with remembering everyone here. So I think this has become an extremely convenient method of communicating and handling the external world. There are some which is related to policy and government, which still I think require more in person. At least from our experience, we are just as a background, we're India's largest mapping and location tech company. We just went public in December, so we also went public remotely and had some offline experiences also along with that. But the majority of the work and stuff happened in a hybrid fashion. In that time, I think some of the fundamentals of our technology stayed. So we look at it in internal and external ways. So the internal work environment stayed, were pretty scalable. We could easily, collaborate with teams that were, across the world. We have offices in the US and Japan also. We were able to collaborate with those teams. We were able to collaborate with teams in different parts of India. We have technical teams that are in Bangalore. We're headquartered in New Delhi. So all of that, was still working well. And the teams would obviously, work together in office as they're, as they have critical problems to solve. They're very, very difficult problems that cannot be like you're doing goal setting and planning. From the external perspective, I would divide that into policy and customers. So in policy related, I would say work, we definitely had to take a online approach at least from our perspective. But from a customer standpoint, especially tech companies and enterprises were very fast to adopt, just kind of latch onto the cloud of an API or some service and able to pull data or integrate this into their own services. From a financial perspective, I can tell you verification remotely became a very important thing. So verifying, so you need to still grow your business digitally. And a lot of the, I would say tech first lenders or tech first financial companies, whether it's even insurance companies, and even the, even the conventional or extremely large financial and, companies were able to do a lot of verification remotely. And because we are a mapping company, we saw those, request increase that, hey, are these addresses true? Do they even exist? Where is this address? And I sent someone to verify that place. Did he even go there or not? These are all questions that were handled remotely for our customers very easily through 2020 until now. So just an example I thought Yashvendra would give that all of us can relate to, that the first step in the process of giving someone a financial product was solved all remotely and was scalable to customers. So I hope that helps get some perspective.
Sure. Great, Ankit. Thanks for those inputs. I'll move to Phil now. Phil, some experts in fact say that customer experience might matter more than price or even the product. Your thoughts on this and how CIOs can ramp up customer experience?
Yeah, so customer experience has become very, very visible, and through the current change in business model and driven a lot of digital transformation. And a lot of the outcomes we're seeing people drive towards is they need to transform some processes that maybe weren't real time, maybe were batch, weren't responsive, weren't reactive, and it's really highlighted. We're 2 years on from the start of the pandemic. We see difference in results of customers that are able to leverage modern platforms, leverage modern approaches, provide a real-time, responsive, interactive experience versus those that don't. And with a lot of the changes that we see in the banking space, and in the retail space around open banking, portability of accounts, people are given the option of being able to move a lot more easily. So, I think really that whole disruption's the norm. Looking at modern technology, it was interesting when Amit mentioned, that the new technology companies, Amazon, Google, they're not really challenges to their business. They're a great source of innovation. And what we've seen is they've really captured some niche approaches, niche technologies that really weren't adopted in the mainstream. And they've driven through some approaches. So we work in the area of event distribution, event-driven computing. And really, if you look at the way that these companies have built their systems, they are very reactive to events that are happening. It's a complete flip from looking at data and API access to data. So, that's really made events mainstream. And I think companies that have, companies and banks and financial institutions that have leveraged that, we've really seen this growth. And even in, if you think about real time, even in the insurance companies, which, your interaction is very limited. However, there's still a drive to be more reactive, more instantaneous, more available in those interactions. So absolutely, I think it's the new norm of having to become much more reactive.
Right. More reactive, more proactive, right?
Yeah.
Great, Phil. Yeah. Wonderful. Let me go over to Samir now. Samir, from financial planning to fitness classes to food festivals, many of the in-person activities and meetings companies once relied on to generate revenue, they've all gone virtual. Now, how can companies rethink customer experience in the age of video?
Well, Yashvendra, if you probably heard what Amit, Phil, and Ankeet had to mention, it was all about instantaneous communication. It was about onboarding the customer digitally, or even interacting and closing, contracts. So if you look at all this, and if I have to take a step behind and speak about it, I mean, customer experience was always the criteria, right? I mean, it was never that customer experience was not the focus. However, before this transformation happened, customers used to put up with whatever substandard service might come in, and it was acceptable to some extent because there were not so many competitors, the technology had not evolved, and so on and so forth. However, today, if you look at it, first and foremost, the customer himself has transformed, right? Due to the pandemic, they were forced to adopt digital tools, whether to have their kids attend online classes or to meet their near ones and dear ones online, right? So the entire life has transformed from physical to a virtual environment. Now it is how these collaborative tools are being brought into these workflows, and aligning with what the panelists spoke about. It is no longer about going virtual today. It's no longer about having those meetings, online meetings, but it is about those workflows and how a collaboration platform can fit into that workflow. Be it onboarding a customer and you need to sign a contract digitally, or having a kiosk somewhere in the rural villages where you can interact or give product information to a customer out there, or having a point of presence, or even interacting with your HNI or NRI bankers through or giving them interacting capability through the phone application itself. Today, it is all about how the video platform or a collaboration platform can be brought into this workflow to simplify and improvise on the CX. It's no longer about, oh, I want to do a virtual meeting or I want to do a video meeting. It's completely different conversation altogether, what we are having at Zoom. Last year, when we started off during the pandemic, it was more about, oh, I want my employees to work from home. Today, it is no longer this case. Today, people like Amit are saying, you know what, I want to sign that document virtually. If I'm meeting my customer virtually, can I sign that document? Yes, you can do that. We just recently introduced the capability to use DocuSign when you're meeting your customers on Zoom platform, and within the Zoom platform itself, you can, have that document shared, application shared, and sign that. That is what is changing now, and that's a revolutionary change which is happening.
Great, wonderful thoughts there, Samir. Mr. Giridhar, I'll come to you. The hybrid work model would continue for the foreseeable future. That's what appears to all of us. How can technology leaders create a connected and engaged workforce that is so geographically spread out? How can they fuel collaboration and innovation at the same time in such a scenario?
Right. So yes, I think, at the end of the day, it's about how do you evoke that human connection, right? And now, in the past, you had to, maybe 20 years ago, you had to stand near a phone booth and call someone, right? And then from there, we went on to mobile phones. Now it's more about interactivity and how am I able to sort of convey, what I feel, and how am I able to sort of figure out what is it that the other person needs here and now, and whether I'm able to do that remotely, right? There might be someone who's sitting really far away. Sure, in terms of tech workers, if you look at tech workers themselves, right? I mean, they're largely comfortable with remote working. There are tools available, but suddenly, a huddle becomes a challenge, right? Or hallway conversation becomes a challenge. And if I want to talk to someone, maybe, I'll have to set up a meeting in advance and then disrupt their schedule, my schedule, right? These become a challenge. So you need to sort of look at innovative ways of going about this, right? And what might be synchronous needs to become asynchronous. That is one very important thing, right? The need for immediacy needs to be relooked at. Right? And you need to also bring in the social element into the interactions. So these are some of the things, right? And there are gamifications available that people are leveraging, overall in terms of collaboration, right? I mean, Zoom kind of tool and adding on things to that. These tend to become very important.
Sure, Giridhar. Great. Coming to Sourabh now. Sourabh, beyond the obvious benefits of getting to know other people in your organization a bit better, collaborating with people outside your immediate team can also, help to inspire innovation and creativity. Do you agree with this? Your take here?
Absolutely. Why not? See, the examples are we conducted our virtual hackathon in our open banking. We went into an open insurance model. And a lot of those internal hackathon was conducted, but even external hackathon, giving them a sandbox environment and the APIs. That was an example of doing this. Connecting with our partners, connecting with our intermediaries, connecting with our various vendor ecosystem. That has resulted in this. And look, collaboration we can't deny. But the hybrid model, as some of the other speakers also talked about, right? That needs to be still worked on. I think Samir talked about the DocuSign and all. I think there are very good examples like that. But these are still don't evoke the earlier part of the transaction, which means during an onboarding process, there is a lot of human elements, as Giridhar was talking about. That conversion happens based on human elements. We are in the business of insurance. No one gets up in the morning and says something bad is going to happen to me, and therefore I need, a risk prevention mechanism, or I need an insurance. Investment is a good habit, right? Investment you need to make, right? So whether I validate someone through a MapmyIndia API, or I use a DocuSign later, these are all very transactional activities. What the collaboration platforms probably are doing and then should do more is to focus on the human element, as Giridhar talked about. And that kind of will take the whole, the paradigm shift. It's not the technology anymore. It is not that technology won't work or would work, won't work. Even security to a large perspective has been taken care of. So security is a continuously moving target, right? So I won't say that it's done. But as all other CIOs would agree, right? It's a continuously moving target. There are threat actors continuously looking at that. However, if the collaboration can mimic the human element, can continuously learn using AI, or in the background, can look at personalization, very specific, whether it is meeting types, whether it is personas of the individuals. I think that's the way to go. Plus, I believe these collaboration tools will evolve beyond collaboration. I'm sure Zoom is doing that. I'm sure Microsoft Teams is doing that. These will become platforms unto themselves, which can enable, the entire transactional view. So whether it's onboarding, whether it's engagement, I should not get out of Zoom. I should not get out of Teams, right? Everything is there, right? Look, many CIOs would agree today we are on what tools? Beyond a certain point, I think in the management, Microsoft or O365 is the tool that everyone has, open on their thing, or Zoom collaboration tools, or Outlook, or or Excel or Word, right? If we get all these tools on a collaboration platform, why not? So it is the way to go.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing those insights, Sourabh. Let me pull in Ankeet again. Ankeet, Samir talked about how they have enabled the functionality of signing remotely. Can you talk a little bit more about how MapmyIndia, helped financial institutions there? What kind of innovations did you bring with respect to financial institutes?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Yashvendra. And I definitely side with what Sourabh said. I just want to add to that there is this there's even a hybrid way in all of what's happening right now, in the sense that there are some transactional attributes to life, like to business, and there are some non-transactional attributes to that also, where you cannot be able to proceed with anything without someone actually visiting a person. Like in case of specific financial products, it has to happen. And even for us as people who are executives and trying to work with fellow executives, it gets tough to build, argue, fight over yearly goals, quarterly goals, because everyone is extremely headstrong. You have to battle it out in person and say, no, this is the direction we're going to go in. That's my experience. So I think I definitely side with that. There are some things that are extremely human, like have that emotional, and that I don't think so. Technology, I don't know if technology can solve it. It definitely will solve it in the future. Maybe that's where all that AR VR stuff is the metaverse stuff is moving towards. But I don't understand the metaverse yet. I don't know if anyone does on the panel. But definitely from our perspective, we've seen both sides of it. Wherever there is a transactional side to business, so people want to transactionally know that should I do something or not. Our APIs have helped them know if addresses are dubious, or are the house number actually address is there. And so that's one. And also in case where it's not a transactional thing, where someone actually has to visit a person, in that case we are able to tell them that, okay, did your person who was supposed to verify a person in person, did he actually visit the address that the applicant gave on the form? So from we've seen basically digitization across the customer lifecycle. So not only verification, but after that, as you manage the customer, and there are customer management systems, that itself location gets embedded to know how are customers behaving. In case of credit cards, we've seen where customers would want to interact with merchants that are closer to them. I mean, in COVID, that's what happened. We started being extremely hyper local as a human species. We were all going into clusters of what is around us most. So person would use the credit card most probably to merchants that are close by. So you've seen all across the customer life cycle, and also around end processes like collections, where people feel people are going to collect. So how do you make people more productive? How do you make sure that they're traveling less and accomplishing more? So that uses a lot of mapping technologies to optimize speeds, and so that's kind of the life cycle. And also on the intelligence part, I think that's grown tremendously. Like if for an insurer, I can take an example of property insurer. If they want to know that I'm going to insure this property, what's around the place, right? Like what kind of physical attributes around the place? Is there a fire station? What are the roads like in front of the place? So all of this data going into to let's say a financial institution to make a decision, and also to understand their users better, to understand negative clusters of users, and then not we make different business decisions on how much they want to lend in those negative clusters. We've seen demand across, whether it is customer journeys, or it's even intelligence around customers and intelligence around places. So that's, and also where to set up branches and where to go next. As you know, India is a huge country, so 700,000 villages. That has, I think, about 40% of the, or 50-60% of the population, sorry, and 7,500 towns and cities, and these large urban agglomerate. I mean, so all in all, like, where do you go? Right? Where do you set up the branch? Where is your audience? All these questions came up, and we were able to tell financial institutions that there are places that are, like, at a grid level, at a 1 square kilometer grid level, we'll be able to tell you that where the affluence resides in this maze of of data parameters. So that's how we were able to help. Sure. And most of this was kind of remotely, and also through in-person interactions with a lot of our customers.
Sure, Ankeet. So Samir, your thoughts here, and do you also agree with Sourabh when he said we need to bring that human element when we talk about collaboration?
Well, absolutely. There is no denying on that. And Sourabh and Ankeet are spot on. And even Giridhar alluded to the fact, right? The missing element of corridor-based conversations or those sessions. There is no denying of the fact that the human element can never be taken away by technology. That's here, and that is required, whether it is for internal interactions within the employees or whether it is an external facing interaction, internal or external, doesn't matter. But what the technologies can do, our collaboration platform can do, and again, Sourabh mentioned very correctly to that is, be or offer the second best experience to the human element. And that's what collaboration platforms like Zoom is doing. And we have been innovating in these areas quite a lot, be it introducing technologies like IoT or AR, VR. And, we've recently even introducing avatars, right? If somebody is uncomfortable in the meeting, we have avatars joining in and so on and so forth. So DocuSign is just one, but there are so many cases, be it right from interacting with the customer or scheduling a meeting or having those ad hoc sessions from cross platforms. It could be, you could be using some compete product or a platform for your instant messaging and chatting, and you can fire a Zoom meeting right from that. And that's the future. That's where we are headed towards, without any friction. And as rightly mentioned, a touch of a button, without any boundaries and without any boundary of device, application, or platform. And that's the true power of collaboration. And probably that will be taking us closer, very close to the next human experience, human touch, but not replace it. That's definitely there. And that's what we as Zoom have been evolving towards. And if you look at the recent announcements that we've done, plethora of announcements we did in the last 3 to 4 months are all towards this. It's no longer about meeting virtually, but bringing in this human element more and more into the collaboration platform, making it more immersive and available across platforms, across devices. And that's the power of collaboration.
Moving to Giridhar. Giridhar, CIOs face challenges with respect to regulatory requirements and risk and fraud. How can they keep up with constantly shifting regulatory requirements? How can they assess risk and detect fraud when credit approvals and lending decisions are being made in real time?
Right. So I think the important bit, Yash, is a relentless focus on data, right? And what is it that you have in front of you in order to be able to make a decision of whether the person that you're dealing with could be risky or fraudulent, right? And building the right kind of systems, and overall, this evolves over time, right? I mean, risk is, particularly in case of lending, it's not something that you are able to judge overnight. The performance data needs to come because loan tenure maybe is 36 months. So unless until the full 36 months passes by, you don't understand the total quality of your book and how risky the customers that you're bringing in. And hence you have to focus on that bit. And once you're able to make sense of that, largely regulatory changes are tweaks in order to lower risk in the ecosystem, right? That can be retrofitted very, very nicely. That's one bit. The second part is, what is it that you are really taking a decision on whether an individual borrower is risky or not, right? I mean, traditionally, there's been a very judgmental process. If a not so well-dressed person with a beard walks into a bank branch, right? The branch manager wouldn't probably give them a loan. I mean, even if they have a very good credit history, because it's a very judgmental process. If a woman walks into a branch saying that, hey, I'm a small business owner, can you give me a loan? Probably they wouldn't get a loan, right? And this is where technology really helps, right? You pull the judgmental part out of it, look at data, look at their business numbers, what is moving in and out of their bank in terms of cash flows, and then take a decision on that. And overall, you'd be able to really get a good risk profile. And that's what we at Lendingkart do, Yash.
Sure, Giridhar. Amit, how do you stay on top of regulatory requirements and risk and fraud?
So we are a completely regulated entity in that sense, and meeting regulatory requirements is more second nature to us. But as I've said earlier, in our space, the regulatory requirements are more towards safety of the markets. And as Giridhar has also said, that is essentially about lowering the risk in the ecosystem. So for us, the risk management and surveillance in our markets, this is more known as surveillance. It is a big part of the IT portfolio. The applications running around that have a major role in the IT landscape. And our processes and systems are constantly being tuned to give these kind of real-time alerts, as much information upfront to our surveillance, inspection, and investigation teams. So, but yes, this is one area which we feel has a huge potential for us, and we are constantly working to improve any and every aspect.
So Phil, do you think infrastructure tools like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and predictive analytics, they have a role to play in overcoming these challenges? If yes, how?
Yeah, no, and interesting. I mean, look, from an infrastructure perspective, right? I think what we're seeing is historically the way that you would, the more systems you put in place, or the more decoupled and distributed technologies. So you may have a new risk system you can use. It might be a cloud-based system. It's the latest and greatest. It meets your business requirements. That's meets the business objective, the business need, and that's similar to your AI, machine learning, analytics. These are all consumers of information. The challenge really comes when you try and lay that on top of a legacy architecture, a legacy organization where the time between something happening and being able to get it to those systems may be extended. So batch used to be able to fulfill the requirements to move information around an organization. Settlement used to be T plus whatever. Now it's real time. Risk is part of that real time decision. It's really coming down to what you need to do in the shortest period of time to mitigate risk. So what we really see is solving today's problem about data infrastructure can be done in a way that decouples or isolates you from future change. So if, for example, the next best machine learning algorithm, or you want to trial pushing a sequence of events that are happening inside of your organization as it's running the business, you can tap into those events, move them to a cloud environment, stream them through into your new AI ML environment, and find that insight. So, by looking at these event native ways of moving data around organizations in real time, it gives you that agility to adapt later on. And we've seen it in with visibility. So first maybe just wanting to be able to do some credit checking, but then you might want to provide visibility back to the customer of it's a multi-stage process, giving them insight into how far it's progressed. Now, if your systems are legacy and aging, and this takes hours or days for it to eventually settle, and customers might not be happy. So, but providing those those updates along the way. So really, we really see it as the newer infrastructure is kind of almost it's not a should I do it, it's when do I do it, and what projects need it first. And we're really seeing a lot of that investment happening onto things like payment platforms, anything to do with customer interaction, customer loyalty, customer data platforms. These are real big generators of events or revenue into organizations, and being real time is a real competitive advantage.
Great. Moving on, coming back to Sourabh again. Sourabh, how can business technology leaders leverage the institutional knowledge that differentiates their business when it's logged in siloed systems? Because more often than not, critical information, crucial information is not freely accessible or flows freely across the enterprise.
So we have used, I can talk about my experience, right? Our legacy is client server era, so since we established in 2002, it's still legacy. Now 21, 22 years now with 74 million unique customers, and you can imagine, right? Millions of intermediaries, hundreds of banks. It's a large ecosystem, and we deal with things internally and externally. What we have done is, I think beyond the technology, right? Technology, I would always say as a technology leader, although, I must mention outside this group, everyone knows, right? But it is the easy part. I think there is a bigger element of saying when you talk about a large enterprise, you will have things in silos. How do we bring this all together with a compelling business case? So if there is a compelling business case based on data and insights, I won't use the buzzwords of AI and ML, right? That come later, right? Based on data and insights, if at every point of sale, point of service, point of engagement, there are very tangible benefits and a business case for that, I think people will come together in the enterprise. You need to demonstrate that. The way, I'll talk about an example where we saw from a risk and underwriting standpoint, something happening at the front end, wherein, a set of, let's say a bad set of customer base was coming in. Till the point we could convince, right, the sales team, including my own, right, I being a CIO, CTO, I run my own P&L as it on the digital side, till the point I was convinced that in a non-intrusive way, in a very seamless way, I was able to get in the entire experience, taking into consideration the entire experience. I was able to use data and insights to block those set of individuals from coming into the system. I don't think that business case would have, gone anywhere without that, right? Without that involvement. So I would say, how do you bring in siloed systems, which are siloed systems as well as data and insights locked in? You have to bring in the right business case and bring in the leaders, towards that common objective, common plan. So it's as much as a change management, angle rather than, the tech angle. Sure. Second, I think we'll have to, from a technology standpoint, you'll have to look at it again as what do you do from an enterprise standpoint? Like, for example, in our case, we were very clear. If I have to give it to my data science team, I will not work on the siloed architecture that I already have with 20 years of legacy and just, go the cloud way, put it in the data lake, ensure that, they start, looking at that internal, external, structured, unstructured sort of data. And once they reach a certain point, we bring them back in, right? And so we were very clear. So the data strategy is as much important, right? In terms of what do you want to do with it. Tech for the tech's sake does not work anywhere. Similarly, for transactional data, we wanted to make sure that, we remove these boundaries by being very clear in terms of what is the outcome that they are going to get. As long as it is very outcome focused, as long as it is very what's in it for me focused, I think the boundaries will go away. The tech part is the easy part.
Sure. Ankeet, your thoughts here?
So from my perspective, essentially we are a company that only builds data and gives access to that data through that's our core business. We're not in any of the end consumer business yet, right? So from that perspective, everything that we do has to revolve around this gigantic amount of data coming together, being crunched on the cloud for different processes, and then going out across hundreds of different products, and then that's serving around 1,000 use cases. So from all perspectives of data strategy, whether it is how we handle data, the security piece, the delivery of it, and how it is crunched, whether on the cloud or on-prem, that's kind of paramount importance. And even in the pandemic, actually, and even right now, there are ways in which we try to optimize how we're using all of that data, how we're crunching all of that data, and I think there was a whole architecture reshuffle also on how we need to store, process. So I think that's kind of at forefront right now. And also since our consumer app usage increased, we've gone to at least about 20 million downloads of our mapping application, which competes with something like Google Maps. We saw more data points come in, and that is data that needs to be protected, right? It's consumer data, so and you need to have very strong ways in which you respect user privacy for that data. So so I think that's kind of evolved and changed our entire way in which we deal with data, and we've had more nuanced approaches. We've at least started learning how to deal with consumer data, which I think most people on the panel already know. But yeah, it's been an evolving journey for us.
Samir, let me come back to you. With data locked in various silos in different formats and configurations, getting a big picture of what is happening throughout the organization can be challenging. This leads to a longer decision-making process, thereby impacting productivity and leading to poor outcomes. Now, what role can integrated communication and collaboration play here?
Well, I think it's simple, right? If collaboration tools are used in the right manner, these silos can be eliminated. That's the simplest and the most basic things for me. I mean, I've been hearing about data analytics and how the data is being utilized and what's in it for me and the outcomes of it. But especially today in this hybrid environment where people are or employees are in some remote location or are not in office or even in office, and as Giridhar mentioned, they are struggling to figure out, hey, I'm looking for a conference room, as basic as that. How many of us have been through that stage where the room is not available, where 3 of us can sit together and start sharing ideas or whiteboard it, right? If technology, if collaboration platform can stitch all these together and empowering the employees internally as well as at the same times those who are external in a hybrid world, then these silos go away. And this again, when we say about collaboration platform, it just can't be that, okay, I want to have a meeting and it is there. But what about those employees who are missing out on this meeting, or somebody who is unable to join that meeting, which happened on the fly because there's 3 people got together and decided to share some idea which popped into somebody's head, right? So tools like instant messaging, presence, chat, whiteboarding, these tools are just to empower and remove these silos. And not only that, but at the same time, help the technology teams to, have better control over security and management of these users. And while doing that, also ensure that, these tools are being deployed in the right manner through a single dashboard kind of a thing, rather than having multiple tools monitoring each of the users, or who is using what or which conference room is available. It's quite a cumbersome effect for it. And then there is a silo for IT, then there is a silo for users who are having data, then there is some another silo for something else. It just keeps on happening. But again, if there's a common collaboration platform cutting across all these empowering internal and external things, that's where the silos collapse. And that's the true power of collaboration.
Right, Sameer, absolutely. Phil, the market today has daunting data distribution needs in the areas of scale, security, and speed, all the while handling unpredictable bursts of activity. Now, how can IT leaders ensure seamless data management while maintaining its security?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, right? So if you think about the history of where is the most challenging part of banking, where you have very, very large data distribution, very large amounts of filtering, geographic nature. This is all, if you look at equities, capital markets, FX, and stock exchanges, they're really the data gods, right? In terms of governance and lineage and usage and distribution and cataloging. Now, that's the area that as a company we started. So a lot of our IP and a lot of our knowledge around how data should be distributed at scale is based on those use cases. So, as we've learned more about other industries, obviously other things come into the picture. I mean, FX has windows where the trading systems are down. The modern systems don't. So obviously now layering in some 24/7 always on. I think it becomes the technology, and again this comes back to technology is probably the easy part. It's working out how you want to use it. So really embracing things like governance around data models, around we call it an event taxonomy. So cataloging what the events are, what the data items are, so that when they are in motion, when they are being consumed, you've got a way of really quickly identifying what's the lineage. So who's consuming what. Because everything's decoupled, so you don't necessarily. It's not you're not pushing data from A to B. You're saying, hey, here's some information, right? So that's very, very decoupled. Great for agility, but needs some governance and control. So we've seen the market. We've been doing a lot of work with the analysts over the years. We brought a technology called the Event Portal to play. This really covers the how does an organization map out their data domains? How do they map out where events are going to be produced and consumed? What's the data model for information in flight across that across the organization and into other organizations? How can I have different parts of the organization? So domain-centric ownership of data models, event models, consumption and emitting. So really maturing, the technology infrastructure is there, but really how people use it, how people adopt it, and making them successful and making it not just a, hey, what can I do today, but make it more, usable in the future and for the future. So really, when we look at things like security, you've got data in motion, data at rest. You need to be providing, everything needs to be encrypted. And we've in the last 3 or 4 years made a huge push into the public cloud space. So, allowing our customers to have some of their assets deployed in Google, some in Amazon, some on premise, but being able to have a single view across all of those environments of how information is flowing. Obviously, with that comes a lot of security requirements. We're running that infrastructure on part of people, so getting into the ability for us to run infrastructure and give you a platform with having no visibility into your data. So really, maturing the SOC 2 compliance has become a massive drive into the tech players to be able to play and help customers in that space. And in the banking space, it's a cost of entry, and it's something we've invested very heavily in, and it's really playing out and resonating with our key customers now.
So we've had a great discussion, gentlemen, and we are coming to the end of this session. So one final question, starting with Amit. Amit, for companies going forward, the aim now would be to boost productivity and maximize their resources. What are your future plans? What are you going to prioritize in the next 6 to 12 months?
Looking at how things have panned out in the last couple of years, one is the growth that has come into the industry. We need to continue with that momentum and with that pace. So till now, in like 18 to 20 years of our existence, the growth rate that we had seen, and now what we have seen in the last 2 years is completely different level altogether. So for us, it is more important to scale up our right from our infrastructure to the processes to ride this particular wave or in this momentum itself. So it's not letting go of this momentum. So we have to really look at each and every aspect of how our business was run, though it's completely digital, but within digital itself, how we have been doing it till now and how we expect this to move is a major area of importance and concern for us. And yes, like everybody else, we are also on the same bandwagon of analytics, AI, ML, data platforms. So all those will help us to take our business to the next level and to the next scale.
Sure, great. Ankeet, your focus areas?
So I think it is definitely to improve or to put a rhythm to how teams collaborate, whether teams domestically or internationally collaborate remotely and in person. I think the latter part is the biggest challenge, like how do they collaborate in person and what is the rhythm of that? And that definitely is something that we want to solve for. And we're also a newbie on the public market, so there is definitely a huge, basically huge expectation from us. So we're definitely focused on delivering those goals for investors. So that includes, from a business perspective, going deeper into India, solving more for customers as much as possible, as quickly as possible, building as many solutions and products, and also globally. We have we'll probably be one of the many India to the world technology platform companies, and we're very proud of that, and hopefully taking more and more of the technology abroad, and we'll be the only first Indian mapping company actually that's completely going abroad. So that's a huge goal for us, and we've already integrated 200+ countries on the platform. So yeah, it's an ambitious target. So that's what we're planning to do next year. You'll hear a lot about
Wonderful.
this.
All the best, Ankeet. Samir.
I think to boost productivity, it is very critical for an organization to understand that at every function, every employee, the requirement at the field level is quite different compared to what has been provided, what has not been provided. So for example, if an organization is choosing a tool which is a jack of all trades, fitting all the requirements and rolled out across the organization, that has changed in the last 1.5 years. What the technology teams have realized is that what works for all probably may not work for a particular division, department, or a particular workflow. And that's where we are seeing more and more collaboration between the technology teams and the businesses to ensure that the solutions and the platforms which are provided really work at the ground level. It's no longer the case where a leadership says that, okay, we want to roll out, this particular application, go ahead and use it. Well, at the end of the day, it's an employee who is working from home or some remote location. They end up choosing their own platform or their own application of their own choice because it just works. And what has been provided doesn't work. This puts the entire organization at the risk. We need to understand that an employee working at home is a CISO of his own device, is a chief security officer of their own. One single wrong click, one single use of wrong device can put the entire organization at risk. So it is more and more this collaborative approach between the technology teams and the businesses to ensure that the solutions that are provided work really at the ground level. And I think that goes a lot more to increase and boost the productivity of the employees rather than, waiting for or rolling out something which just doesn't work. And I think that's what the evolution we've seen or transformation we've seen in the last 1 to 1.5 years.
Okay.
Whatever we do at Zoom, we are trying to bring in more and more elements which suffice to the requirements of both these teams. That is the business teams at the ground level, as well as the technology and security teams at the back end.
Sure. Great, Samir. Final thoughts from you, Phil?
No, so look, I mean, I think, wrapping up from where I sort of started, the adoption of different architectures, is really something we're seeing. Really looking at, don't look at technology for technology's sake, but look at the value it can give to not just the problems of today, but how they can, provide a more efficient or a more scalable, more future-proof way of solving today's problems, but paving the way for tomorrow. I think the reality for a lot of organizations, there is a large amount of legacy investment, legacy infrastructure, that can't be replaced. Or it can't be replaced easily, and doing projects to replace old legacy infrastructure is very, very hard to justify. So what we're seeing is new technologies have been adopted with new new investment, new innovative areas. Events are really solving those real-time problems that people are sort of struggling with their existing platforms, but co-deploying event-based architectures and thinking alongside traditional API-based and traditional database and application-based. So really, I think recommend checking out, talking to the analysts around where they see the trends going in technology, which ones are hype, which ones are really kind of showing traction, and look to adopt and evaluate those technologies as they evolve.
Sure. Great. That's all we have time for, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to once again thank our panelists for sharing those insights and our attendees for watching this session. Thank you very much.